I call it my modified floating fool.
So what size
It's a
hook you
Malta.
using? What size hook are you using on that?
I'm going to tie these on 14s.
14.
I tie these, I'll go from 10s all the way down to 18s. I'm going to use a little bigger one, a 14 here. Hopefully you'll see it a little better. This pattern is one that I've modified from a Buzz Busnick pattern called the multicolored floating fool. And I got started tying it years ago when I first started teaching fly tying lessons through our adult education program. You know, I hadn't been tying very long, but I tried to keep a week ahead of the class because I was the instructor. And one day somebody said, will you show us how to tie a parachute? And I said, sure, of course. Of course, I'd never even heard of a parachute at that point. So I went home and went through my books and found 2 or 3 patterns that I tried, different parachutes, and it turned out horrible. And then I found this one in Terry Hellickson's book, Modern Trout Flies. And it looked a little simpler. And so I tied it for a number of years and used it. Well, I didn't use it at first. Let me digress a little bit. I'd put it in my fly box and carry it with me, but I never used it. Well, late one afternoon, we were up on Wade Lake up in Montana. My son and I were out in a canoe. And in class, I had tied these on a 12 most of the time. And a little hatch came up, some little tiny midges of some type. And I went to the littlest flies I could find and couldn't get a strike. I noticed this, so I finally thought, well, as long as I'm out here casting, I'm going to put something on I can see and practice casting. Well, before we pulled in, I'd caught 3 nice fish. I was sold on that fly. And since then, it's pretty much become my favorite pattern, except I have now, as you can see, as I wrote here. And incidentally, I do have pattern sheets here if you want them. You want to go ahead and pass them around. I have modified it. In the original pattern, Buzz used calf tail for the wing and the tail. 1 piece of calf tail, natural tip sticking out for the tail, and then pull the butts up for the wing. And I thought it made a pretty bulky fly. And also I didn't like the idea of the white tail. So I have changed it, and I'm now using an imitation material yarn for the wing, and I use some Zelon for a shuck. I like a shuck. You could put in moose body hairs or, well, my 2 favorite tail materials are moose body hair or elk hawk hair. Or I'd like to put in a shuck using the Zelon, and that's the way I'm going to tie this. I want this to be completely informal, so if anybody has a question anywhere along the line or wants to say something, I encourage you to do so.
You didn't bring a tip bucket or nothing like that, did you?
Bring a what?
A tip bucket.
A tip bucket?
Yeah.
No. No, Randy. That's,
usually they have pretty good tips around here, though.
You know, last time I did that, you took off with it. Get it.
That helped out Obama's campaign, you know.
Okay. This is a parachute pattern. And when I tie parachutes, or any upright wing pattern as far as that goes, I tie the wing in first, which I'm sure probably most of you do. And I'm using this Antron yarn. And on a size 16 or larger, I'll fold it over and use a double strand. I tie these down to 18s, and I have tied 20s before. I don't encourage it, but an 18 or 20, I'll just use a single strand. So I'll double it over, tie it in the wing position here, leave plenty of room for a head. And when I trim the butts off, I'll lift them up and trim them at kind of an angle. And then bind those down good. You notice by trimming them that way, I get a nice slope on the butts there as I tie them in. Then I'll go ahead and stand up the wing. And then I'm going to wrap around several wraps the base of the wing. Gives it a little more support and gives it a base for the hackle when I wrap that around it. Like that. Now I'm going to tie in the hackle. I use 2 hackles on this, Adam's hackling, which means it's a grizzly hackle and a brown hackle mixed. And I like to prepare the hackle by trimming back the fibers on the butt end a little bit. And line them up. I tie them in together and wrap them together. And I tie them in right behind this post I just tied on. 3 or 4 wraps. And then, again, around the base of the wing along with the hackle butts.
Now, do you tie those concave down?
Yes. And I'm going to be truthful with you, Randy. I don't worry a great deal about it.
Mm-hmm.
If they're concave up, it just lets them sink a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But by tying a shuck in, what I'm really doing is imitating a emerging,
Mm-hmm.
or a crippled emerger even.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's down in the water a little bit more, it doesn't do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, I don't even worry about it. Now I'm going to take a little piece of Z-Lon. The nice thing about shucks is you can't tie them in wrong. They can be thick, they can be thin, they can be a little short, they can be a little long. It's all okay. But I'll tie those in. Then bend them back over so I'm tying them in both ways. So they're anchored well. Now it's not going to pull out very easy. And then I'll just trim these tips back here. And this one I've got fairly thick. So we got our shuck tied in now. And then the body is some peacock herl.
Mm-hmm.
And this is fairly thin peacock herl that I have. So I very carefully straighten up the tips.
It sounds good.
Through the butts, and tie them in by the butt. Bring my thread forward. And wrap a body of peacock herl. And when I get up here, I'll wrap a couple or 3 wraps around the front also, so that I have an even base for these hackle to lie when I wrap them. If you don't put something in front, then they'll tilt a little bit. And incidentally, when I'm using saddle hackle, which I am, saddle hackle's pretty long. And if I don't trim it, well, it flops down and it's in the way. So these I've cut down so they're easier to handle. Now we're ready to wrap this, and when I wrap the parachute, I do it counterclockwise. You take each wrap around the base. I've got 2 hackles, so by 3 wraps here, I've really got 6 wraps of hackle, which is fairly well hackled fly. Then I go around over the top of the hook, bring it back underneath and pull it toward me, and pull it tight and take up any little bit of slack I may have on those hackles. And then just go ahead and start forming a head. Tie them in and start forming the head. Trim them. Notice my finger is between the thread and the scissors. I suspect all of you have already learned that.
I still go clockwise.
Pardon me, Randy?
I still wrap clockwise. It's time to go forward in life, not backwards. I just keep going clockwise, counterclockwise. I just can't get that. I just can't.
That's
I
fine.
just go
You know,
clockwise,
you
huh?
talk to different fly tyers, and they all have different ideas.
Yeah.
And there's a right way to do anything, and there's a wrong way.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure which one mine is. I do it my way.
Your way's the right way, right?
For me. Start shaping a head.
What do you think we call him wrong way, Randall?
Give myself a little more thread here and ready to whip finish.
Hey, you want your DVD today, Gary?
And what I like to do is a double whip finish. And I don't use head cement. It sticks to my fingers. Now all we have to do is trim this wing post.
Mm.
And there we go.
It's pretty good. Pretty sick.
Any questions? Comments?
What time of year do you fish that?
Pardon?
What time of the year do you fish that?
Anytime.
Anytime.
It's an attractor pattern. I'm sure all of you probably realize this, but tyer patterns, you can tie imitative, which is supposed to look exactly like some kind of natural or another, or suggestive, which is what I really think most flies are, even some that are claimed to be imitators, which look pretty much like several things. And then you get an attractor, which really doesn't look like anything in nature, that for some reason or other, fish are attracted to it. This particular pattern, this has replaced, for me, this has replaced the royal wolf.